My name is Raquel, and I'm a lead naturalist at the Environmental Nature Center. Thank you for joining us for this Facebook Live post. I would like to welcome you to our Earth Week celebration. All week long, we're going to have live videos that are about how to take care of our Earth and be more sustainable. Also, through our social media on Instagram and Facebook, we'll have special videos about how you can make some sustainable choices in your life and easy, fun things you can do to help our Earth. So when we talk about sustainability, what that word means is really thinking about the choices we make and how do we reduce waste in our lives. So some main areas of waste that we can think about, and even the impact that we have on the environment, usually have to do with air, water, and our land. So if we think about the impact we have with the air, that might be the car that we drive has emissions that go into the air that have pollutants that are harmful to our environment, to our air. So air is really, we think about any contaminations or pollutants that end up in the air in our atmosphere. And then when we think about our impact we have on the earth in terms of water, that also has to do, of course, with pollution. So things that we have that may end up in our water, maybe it's trash, maybe it's other liquids like the fuel from our cars, or maybe the oil that comes off of our cars. But water also has to do with waste, right? So how much water are we using? How much fresh water are we using in our daily lives? Because that's a finite resource, the amount of fresh water that we have. And then we also have our land. So if we think about our impact on the land, that might be having to do with habitat loss. So we think about all of the wonderful animals that we've been learning about that we have at the Environmental Nature Center. A lot of them are impacted by not having enough space to live. We also can think about pollutants with land. So again, anything that ends up in our land that's not supposed to be there, that's a contaminant. It might be trash, it might be other liquids that really are going to have an impact on our environment. So now that we've thought about what impact we as humans have on our environment, our air, water, land, now we can think about what choices can we make to better help our Earth and reduce our impact. So I know many of you might have heard of the saying, very common, reduce, reuse, recycle, right? The 3 R's. And I would encourage you now, we can go beyond that. We can think about even more steps we can take to have less impact on our environment. So I like to use these 5 R's. We've kind of stepped up our game, right? So the first one is refuse. So thinking about, do I need this thing? Do I need this object? What can I refuse in my life to have less impact? So it might be when I go to get takeout sushi, I might say, no, I don't need those chopsticks, right? Because I already have a set of chopsticks at home. So it's having the boldness and remembering to refuse the things that we don't need. And then our other R is rethink. So we can think about, that's kind of what I think about is kind of being reflective, right? So let's rethink the choices that we make and how can we do things in a different way. So this is really, sometimes it's easy, right? There's so much suggestions and things in our world we can look up to try to rethink the impact that we have and the things that we use every single day. But also we can reflect again about what are the things that we don't need, or what's a way that I can make this small change to lessen my impact and help the environment. Our third one, of course, is one of the R's, reduce. So then it's thinking about can I use less? And this also has to do with our waste, right? So maybe I don't need as much of something. I'm going to reduce so that I can produce less waste that ends up in our environment, in our land, and in our oceans. And then our fourth, another classic, is reuse. So then that also takes that rethinking and out of the box creativity that maybe we can use. So reuse might be that I'm purchasing, of course, classic, a water bottle that is made of metal that I can refill again and again instead of buying a new water bottle. But it might also be taking something like the container that my yogurt came in and taking that yogurt container and making it into something new. We call that upcycling also. So maybe I'm going to use it to store some beads or maybe some pencils or crayons instead of throwing that away. And then our last one is responsible disposal. So that's really taking the time to think about what can I do with this thing that has to be disposed of, and how can I dispose of it in a responsible way. So we want to reduce the amount of things that end up in our trash can, because those things go into our landfills, they take up space in the land that could be habitats for animals, and then often anything that goes into our trash can has the potential to get lost along the way, end up in our oceans, and harm those animals there. And so responsible disposal might be thinking about our number one choice: can we compost this item? So can we take it and turn it back into dirt that can be reused? And then we're thinking about recycling. So can I take it to a recycling center? And even a lot of places, a lot of cities now, you can throw your recyclings into the trash can. But you could even take it one step further and separate your recycling yourself and take it to your local recycling center that usually where you can donate that recycling and it'll help a good cause. So that's something else we can think about. And then our very last choice is having to put it in the trash, and that's where we go back to rethink. So if I had to put that styrofoam to-go container in the trash can, how can I rethink a better way to do this so that I don't have to be down here in responsible disposal? So today, as we just talked about that overview of how to be more sustainable and have a sustainable impact, now we're going to talk about one of my most favorite topics in sustainability, and that is sustainable food. So today we are in my parents' garden, which is just so beautiful, so many great things growing. And in this garden, we can think about how we use our food and what kind of food that we buy, and how we can be sustainable and have less impact with our food. So I like to use the acronym SLOW when we think about our food. So that stands for seasonal, local, organic, and then thinking about our waste. So how can we have less waste? So let's think about this avocado we have here. One of my favorite foods. Love an avocado. Season. Now in California, we are so fortunate. We have foods that are in season very often because we have a Mediterranean climate. So we have access to different foods all year round in terms of our produce. But we can also take some time to research and think about, is this seasonal? So is this the avocado season? And if I want to have an avocado in the spring, maybe I'm going to pick a type of avocado that grows and is fruit in the spring. The other thing with seasonal and why we want to buy seasonally is because that means that our food is going to travel less miles. Maybe you've heard that term before, food miles. And so that's the distance it takes our food to travel. So if I want to have maybe a strawberry in the winter and I live in Virginia, then that strawberry is going to have to travel very, very far to get to me. So that strawberry in that travel is going to produce emissions, it's going to have impact on our air, and so maybe I have to decide I'm not going to eat a strawberry in the winter. I'm going to make it different and find something else to eat. Our next part of this acronym is local. So that has to do with our food miles also. So if we can get food locally, something that is grown in our very own backyards, like here in this garden, or grown in a farm nearby, then it's one, benefiting our local economy, and then also it is not having to travel so far. So if you think about this avocado, was grown on a tree near my dad's work, and he was able to pick that avocado, so it had very low food miles that it went. And then this also, when we shop locally, it helps us be seasonal. So maybe we're going to go to the farmer's market in your community, and there's so many resources online to find a farmer's market. And we know that those things in the farmer's market are usually local, and they're going to be seasonal, right? Because it's things that are grown in our climate. Now we have organic. And organic is a term, kind of a buzzword, right? So it's about having pesticides. So is the food that is being grown, are different pesticides being used? There's also some many other things that have to do with organic and different, but that's something we can think about. So organic is going to be something that is going to have different health benefits, but it's also going to impact the environment, right? So if we're buying food that doesn't promote the use of pesticides, it's going to be better for our animals on the land and reduce the amount of pollutants that might get into our land. And of course, when you are able to grow things in your backyard or buy them from the farmer's market, you know the farmer, you know the person who grew maybe your avocado, and so you can ask them, were your pesticides used in growing this? And you can learn more about how this was grown. And then the last one has to do with waste. So that's really thinking about how much we're buying so that we don't have as much waste. So you bought something and you bought a lot of it because you thought you were going to eat a lot of it. And then you found out, my family is not going to eat this many cucumbers, and they're going to go bad in the fridge. So maybe I'm going to buy less next time, or maybe I'm going to do something else with those cucumbers to make them last longer to reduce our waste. We also, another part of sustainable food alternatives is thinking about how much animal products that we eat. So of course, this is something we think about a lot, thinking about vegetarian or vegan diets, and often our meat consumption and the amount of animal products we eat, it has a large impact on the environment. A lot of water is used to raise a cow. And so we can think about, maybe we don't have to cut that out of our diet completely, but we can think about reducing. So just like in our R's that we talked about, we can think about reducing the amount of meat we can eat. We can look up fun vegan recipes, and maybe 1 day a week, 2 days a week, maybe 3 meals, we can reduce the animal products that we're using in our meals. So now as we think about local, I want to talk to you about different types of gardening that you can do in your home. So of course we are in a very large garden here with a lot of space, and so we have fruit trees growing, we have a grapevine, we have an herb garden, we have row crops here. And so I want to talk about the crops we have here. So if you have space for a garden, maybe even a little bed, you can grow a lot of different types of crops in a small space. So this is set up so that we can have plants here growing in the bottom. We have plants growing in the middle and up this trellis vine. So we'll have cucumbers here and tomatoes. And then also you can even look at the way this bed is set up for irrigation. So the bed is lower in the ground, and so the plants are going to grow in this lower part, and we are going to be able to put water there, and the water is going to stay in the soil and keep those plants moist so that we won't have to water as much as maybe we usually would if this bed was flat. So when we grow crops like this, we're going to be able to get seasonal crops from our backyard. Also, the amount of variety that you plant in your backyard is going to help you get food all year long. And so you can plant using seeds. So you can plant seeds, or you can start your own starter plants using seeds and then plant them right into your garden like this. Now let's look at some fruit trees. So something really cool trees is they grow, especially citrus trees grow so well here in California in our climate. And you can actually put your trees in containers like these and still get fruit off of them if maybe you don't have a place to plant them, or you don't have, a big row of area, a lot of dirt. And so you can have things like lemons growing on your patio or in the front of your house if you just put them in these bins. Of course, if you want your trees to be bigger and produce more fruit over time, you're going to put them into the ground, and so you can get these big fruit trees here. Now let's look at some other options. Maybe if you don't have this amount of space available. So, like I said, you can grow maybe your trees in buckets like this. You can also do what we call raised garden beds. So that can take place in something like a bucket like this. So maybe I'm going to, and I can plant maybe I want to grow onions. I can put my onions into this container, and this container I'll put peppers, basil, something like that. Or you can make, even out of wood, a raised bed where you can plant different things. And maybe you don't have very much space at all. You could even grow small plants inside little planters like these, fill them with dirt, and plant the seeds. And then you can have maybe a small herb garden or different things growing inside these small plants. And what I would really like to say about sustainable food is that it's all about making small choices. So what are little choices that I can make that are going to better our environment? So maybe think about something that you use a lot. Maybe you love to cook with rosemary, and you could plant a small rosemary plant in your yard or on your deck, and then you're able to get that fresh rosemary from your garden, and it's one last thing that you're buying from the grocery store and that has to travel many food miles. So it's all about making little choices and think about what I'm able to do to reduce my impact just a little bit. So we talked about responsible disposal, and I talked about as one of the best options for responsible disposal. So composting is when organic matter breaks down, and usually you have decomposers that help with that. So different insects are decomposers and fungus. They break down organic matter and they turn it into dirt. So let's take a look at an example